am traumatized till this day to go to my friend's house. So this brings us back to 2021. Before we continue, I'm just gonna name my friend Ella. But anyway, me and Ella were literally addicted to video games, and I mean addicted big time. Also, keep in mind when I say 2021, I mean the day before 2022. Me and Ella were addicted to this specific game called Fortnite. She had literally been crying about the skin that she really wanted. I kept on telling her to get over it because it was too expensive. And neither of us had that kind of money. Well, I did, but I didn't want to spend that much on the game. About a couple of days later, me and Ella had planned a sleepover. And the sleepover was at her house. When we were at her house, the first thing she did was take me to her room and literally turn on Fortnite. When we planned a sleepover, I thought she meant like going swimming, going out to eat, or something like that. But I get it, because she really loved Fortnite. And not even 30 minutes in, Ella took me to a whole list of stuff she wanted to buy. It was around $200 to $300. And she bought it with her dad's credit card. And about 20 minutes later, literally 20 minutes later, after Ella had purchased a whole list of items worth of $200 to $300 on her dad's credit card, all of a sudden you just hear a guy yell as loud as he can. And that guy was Ella's dad. And not gonna lie, he scared me. I thought someone was breaking into their house. And when I tell you I'm scared, I mean like I was about to grab my stuff and run out of her house. The words Ella's dad yelled were, "Ella, come here now!" Well, it wasn't that calm. It was a little louder. Ella knew what she did was very wrong, and she surprisingly hid in her closet. Her dad called her multiple times to his room, and she did not come out. Honestly, if that were me, I would do the same. But she left me on her bed, and the screen on her TV was all the items she bought. And it kind of made it seem like I purchased them. I had to think fast, and I did not know what to do, so I quickly ran under Ella's bed. And of course, it took time because I had to make room under her bed. With the corner of my eye, all I saw was an angry man coming out with a belt. So literally on the corner of my eye, all I saw was an angry man. And I wasn't really scared because that was my friend's dad. So I got up from under the bed, just acting normal, and he literally looked so mad. But then once he saw me, he had like a big old smile on his face, as if he was trying to play it off that he was mad at Ella. When I saw him smile, it was a little bit awkward, but I of course smiled back. And let me remind you guys, I am never going back to her house ever again. Then a few minutes later, Ella's mom comes in from the front door because she had brought food for Ella, Ella's dad, and me. So she yells across the house to tell us that the food is here, and Ella runs out to the kitchen. But she didn't even make it to the kitchen because her dad grabs her arm, and I was literally scared. Anyways, I continue walking to the kitchen, and Ella's dad takes her to the side of the kitchen, and he questioned her about the credit card, and she lied. So Ella's dad had questioned her about the credit card, and what she said was unexpected. I thought she would be truthful about it and just own up to it. But from the corner of my ear, I hear her say, "Dad, it wasn't me, it was her." And her finger was pointing at me. I turned my head and my mouth literally dropped. Once I saw her finger pointing at me, I was literally about to slap her hand down. Ella's dad immediately turns his head and says, "Is that why you come to my house, so you can spend my money?" My jaw literally dropped. I could not believe Ella would do such a thing. And before I could even say a word, Ella says, "Dad, I tried to warn her, but she did not listen." While Ella was still spreading those lies, her dad looked down at her pocket. While Ella continues to spread those lies, Ella's dad looks down at her pocket and sees a bright gold piece of plastic. Her dad became furious and he started questioning her. He was asking her questions like, why was her name under all of the stuff that was purchased? Each time he would ask her those questions, she would stutter and did not know what to say. She would literally change the subject every 5 seconds. It took Ella's dad a few minutes to catch her in a lie. And let me tell you, that did not go well. First, she stole from her dad's credit card, and second, she tried to lie and blame it on me. What kind of friend does that? Even though Ella's dad already caught her in a lie, she kept blaming it on me. And let me tell you this, lying did not get her anywhere. Then Ella's mom starts to get curious and asks me what's going on. I explained everything to her, and she was so shocked. She apologized multiple times for me, but Ella didn't. Not even once. Ella's dad's voice was getting a little louder, and all of a sudden, I just saw him pull out a belt. So all of a sudden, Ella's dad pulls out a belt. And let me tell you, I was literally scared. Then Ella's mom gets a little embarrassed that Ella's friend is watching her about to get whooped. And she just stops everything. And then she says, "I'm sure there's a way she can pay you back, honey." Ella's dad agrees. Then he tells Ella that she has about 5 hours to come up with all the money she spent on his credit card, because there was a certain amount of time where he owed the money. You can see the look on Ella's face, and she looked really shocked because she doesn't have that kind of money. Then Ella runs towards her room, acting like if she had an idea. And she literally pulls out every single one of the teddy bears that I had bought her in the previous years. And those teddy bears were expensive. I actually had no idea what she was doing. She looked like if she was trying to do something to get back at me, for being honest. I was literally hoping she wasn't going to do what I thought she was going to do. Until I literally saw her making price tags. Ella literally freaked me out after seeing her pick up those expensive teddy bears that I had bought her in the past. I had no idea what she was going to do until she pulled out paper, scissors, and a marker. She was cutting up the papers into small squares, and she was making price tags for the expensive teddy bears that I had bought her. I was so shocked because the prices she was putting on there was not affordable. They were way overpriced than what I paid for. I didn't think much of it because I thought she was going to pay me and her dad back. But the money she gave me was fake.
My best friend almost killed my son. So I met this girl in high school freshman year. Let's call her Rose. Rose was outgoing, fun, and goofy. We were nerds at the time, but grew up by freshman years. There was no issues with her at all whatsoever. No red flags. The only problem in my life, though, and throughout a majority of my life, was that I lived in a toxic household. My father used to beat on me, and my mother used to emotionally manipulate me. And then my mother would sit here and really have the nerve to complain when I wouldn't spend time with her. And then when I tried to explain why I wouldn't, she would just sit here and emotionally abuse me again. So one day I started showing symptoms of pregnancy and I went and got tested, and it turns out I was 6 weeks pregnant. I had a boyfriend at the time, so I informed him. He told me he wanted no part in this. I was devastated and distraught and heartbroken, not to mention. Not only did he never actually love me, but he also abandoned his soon-to-be child. So my best friend brought up the idea of living together. My gut was telling me something was off about this idea, but I knew her for 4 years and I knew she wouldn't do anything bad.
We rented out a 2-bedroom apartment and everything was fine at first. She forgot to do a couple of chores, but after reminding her, she did it. So one day she got a girlfriend and everything was fine. But she started to park in my parking spot. She used to eat our food and sometimes my food, and she would leave the bathroom a mess by missing the trash can and leaving the floor wet during showers. She even went through my personal belongings at one point drunk, thinking it was Rose's room. I told Rose about this problem and she apologized and said she'd talk to her girlfriend about it and tell her to stop. Which, her girlfriend did stop for a period of time. I ended up having the baby. I remember on the way there, I asked Rose to bring me, but she was complaining because her and her girlfriend were watching a movie. That was the first red flag for me. So then as time progressed, I was raising my son and everyone loved him, but she was complaining about the noise and him crying, so she helped me soundproof my room. So my baby was sleeping and I was gonna go to the grocery store, which was like a block away. So I left him there, I put the monitor up in case anything happened, and I left to the grocery store. So I came back to the apartment and it felt like it was 100 degrees inside the house. It was so hot that I experienced a whiplash of hot air. I could barely breathe. It was so muggy. I was wondering why the AC was off, and then I realized my son was home. I ran to him and he was slightly unconscious. I tapped his face a couple of times and then he started crying. I ran to the car and blasted the AC. I gave him some of my milk and luckily he was okay. He fell asleep in the car seat. I was so mad. Then I saw Rose pull up with her freaking girlfriend. I got up and I confronted her. I asked her why she turned off the AC and I told her she could have killed my kid, literally. She just brushed it off and said the bill was getting too high. She also told me I shouldn't be worried or mad about it because my baby was okay and alive. I was so mad, I just literally went upstairs and I started packing my stuff. As I was packing my stuff midway, she grabbed some of my stuff. I literally had to pepper spray her to get her out of my room. I ended up staying at a hotel for about 6 months. Now I live in an apartment alone with my baby. Luckily, I'm financially stable. You don't really know a person until you live with them.
In over a dozen cases that have been ruled as suspicious drownings, a smiley face has been found near the body. The smiley face killer has been somewhat of a theory for a while, from 1997 all the way up to 2017. 45 bodies of college-age males have been found in 11 states, all in bodies of water. And many of these cases are strikingly similar. While police have just ruled this off as an accidental drowning, New York City detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, both extremely credible sources with about 40 years of combined experience, have been working hard to solve these unsolved cases. They believe for many reasons that police have ignored obvious signs that we have a serial killer or a group of serial killers on our hands, and that they could be potentially responsible for up to 335 cases. All of the victims have been male, college-age, athletic, popular, and high on academic achievements. So they suspect that these murders may be out of jealousy. Almost all of the bodies found show signs of dying on land and come back positive for a roofie drug. So why were these ruled as an accident? Let's look at the cases. Part 2 to the smiley face killer. So first, let's talk about the case of Patrick McNeil. On February 16th of 1997, Patrick was last seen with his friends at a bar called the Dapper Dog. This is located in Manhattan's Upper East Side. After throwing up in the bathroom, he told his friends he was leaving and would be taking the subway back. And after that, no one saw Patrick again, and his body was recovered floating next to the Brooklyn Pier in the East River, 50 days later and 12 miles from where he was last seen. After looking at CCTV footage, he can be seen stumbling down the street and last seen turning left onto 90th Street. However, it doesn't seem like he's alone. A van actually follows pretty closely behind him, and when he stops to throw up, they stop too. After a witness got a partial view of the plate, police still refused to look for it because they thought it would be too expensive, and just dismissed it as an accidental drowning, even though his autopsy death was classified as undetermined. His blood alcohol level did not seem consistent with the state that he was in. That's when Detective Gannon promised Patrick's parents that he would find their son's killer or killers. Part 3 to the smiley face killer. So why didn't Detective Gannon think that Patrick had drowned? Well, police ruled it this way because of an overconsumption of alcohol. However, his blood level of alcohol was not extremely high, which would not have been consistent with him throwing up. He was recovered on his back, which is unusual for a drowning. Blood lividity is the process in which the person's blood will stop moving after the person is deceased. For example, if you die on your side, your blood will pool to the side. And even though he was found on his back, the blood lividity was absent from his back, which is where it would be if he had died in that position. He had thermal injuries on both his hands and torso as if he had been burned, and strangulation markings on his neck. The most telling thing, though, is that his feet and hands did not present any skin slippage, which would have been consistent with having been submerged for 50 days. Nor was he bloated, which is found in a lot of drowning cases. In fact, the signs on his body would have been consistent with him being in the water for only 24 hours. Gannon's theory? He was stalked, abducted, held for an extended period of time, murdered, and then disposed of in the water. Part 4 to the smiley face killer. So now let's talk about the case of William Hurley. In October of 2009, he called his fiancée to come pick him up from a sporting event, letting her know that he was feeling really tired and that his phone was about to die, but gave her his location just in case. She came, and he was nowhere to be found. His body was found 6 days later in the Charles River in Boston, Massachusetts. This man was a Navy veteran. Similarly to Patrick, surveillance footage showed him stumbling. But again, when examining his body, his blood alcohol level was very low. So they decided to test for a roofie, and he came back positive with GHB, which would have explained the stumbling for both of them with such a low alcohol level. Not only this, but his phone was smashed nearby him. He had blunt force trauma to the head and eye socket and behind his left leg. But again, police said he must have slipped, hit his head, and accidentally drowned. It's so suspicious to me that the police are just writing it off as an accident, even though this man was literally in the Navy and able to communicate his location. And the case that comes after this is somehow more mysterious. Part 5 to the smiley face killer. So the next case that we're going to talk about is Dakota James, who was literally a swim team captain. On January 5th of just 2017, he goes out to a bar with some coworkers, leaves to go home, and then is never seen again. 40 days later, his body is found in the Ohio River near Neville Island. On CCTV, he wasn't stumbling at all, just looking at his phone, and then walks towards an alleyway. 10 miles from this area is where his body's found. However, to have gotten there on its own, it would have had to travel through a dam, but his body didn't have a single scratch or bruise on it, which would have been consistent for going through something like that. Not only this, but again, there was roofie in his system, and Gannon even said it looked like there was strangulation marks on his neck. According to the autopsy, there was not enough water in his lungs to prove that he had drowned. And even though he had been missing for 40 days, his body only had 3 days of decomposition. To add to the spookiness, 11 smiley faces were found spray painted close to the bridge where his body was found. And again, shockingly, this was ruled as an accidental drowning.
This is the story of the time I did makeup on a model, and she was one of the worst clients I ever had. Before I get into the story time, I just want to introduce y'all to my friend Hallie. I'm going to be doing makeup on her face today instead of mine, and we're going to be doing a purple e-girl inspired look. Okay, now let's get back to the story. This model was actually a close friend of mine a couple of years ago, and she had reached out to me as a local makeup artist to have me do her makeup for a special event. The model in question here was one of those girls who didn't really wear any makeup unless it was for a photo shoot or a very special occasion. That being said, she was used to having her makeup done pretty often. She had modeled in multiple magazines and has since then appeared in multiple online and in-store ad campaigns for several big-name brands. When she arrived for her appointment, she had already explained to me that she wanted to look pretty, but kind of like she wasn't wearing makeup at all. Believe it or not, doing a no makeup look was actually a pretty frequent request among my clients. Also, I want you to keep in mind that I had never done this girl's makeup before, and I just kind of assumed that she would be totally used to the entire process since she had gotten her makeup done so many times for photo shoots. A couple minutes before her appointment time, she had texted me to let me know that she would be just a couple minutes late. On this particular day, I had clients back to back to back,
So I wasn't really upset about her being late. I was kind of excited to actually get to sit down and have a short break. Well, she ended up being almost 30 minutes late to her appointment. As soon as she did arrive, she asked me if I had anything to drink or anything to snack on because she was so hungry and parched. I went into my kitchen and grabbed her a bottle of water and some fruit. And when I came back, she was completely glued to her phone. Usually, I would advise my clients to keep their chins and nose pointed up towards the ceiling just to make it easier for me to get to their face. But no matter how many times I asked her to please lift her face, she was just completely glued to her phone. Even while I was doing her eyeshadow, she had her eyes open. And while I was working on her face makeup, she was eating the grapes and drinking the water like I wasn't even touching her face. I never want to be rude to my clients, and I always want them to have the most comfortable and fun experience as possible. I also try to avoid pretty much any confrontation. So I really didn't know what to do in this situation because half of the time I couldn't get to the part of her face that I needed to get to finish her makeup. And even if I could, her face was constantly moving from the chewing, texting, and drinking. Not only did I find this particularly difficult to work with, I also found it really rude. Because of all of the distractions, it ended up taking me about half an hour longer to complete her makeup. Keep in mind, she was also half an hour late. And it actually ended up pushing back all of my other appointments for the day. At the end of the day, she absolutely loved her makeup and she gave me a tip. But after that, I've refrained from offering my clients any snacks or drinks if I'm about to do their makeup. And I still thought it was kind of rude. What do you think?